Why do we bury the dead? The obvious answers are almost too easy. Decomposition, disease, tradition, religion, respect. Yet none of them explains the strangest part. A person dies, and within hours something impossible seems to have happened. Almost everything is still there, and yet someone is missing. The face remains. The fingerprints remain. The scars remain. The brain that stored a lifetime of memories is still inside the skull. Nothing resembling a soul rises visibly from the body. Nothing can be weighed leaving it. And still, when we stand beside the dead, we rarely say, "He is here," only dead. We say, "He is gone." Gone where? What exactly disappeared? And why does a body become more sacred to us at the precise moment it can no longer feel what we do to it? For tens of thousands of years, human beings have interrupted their own lives to deal with bodies that no longer participate in them. We carried them, washed them, burned them, wrapped them, preserved them, lowered them into excavated earth. We placed objects beside them, spoke words over them, carved their names into materials expected to outlive their flesh. A corpse cannot appreciate any of this. So who is the ritual really for? Perhaps this is why a grave is such a disturbing human invention. We place what remains of a person where we cannot see it, then place their name exactly where we can. The body goes below. The identity stays above. It is almost as though burial admits two truths that refuse to fit comfortably together. This person is no longer here, yet this person cannot simply become nothing to us. And the deeper we look into the history of burial, the stranger the problem becomes. Some of our distant ancestors deliberately buried their dead. Neanderthals did it too. Civilizations later built entire metaphysical worlds around death. Others burned the body precisely because preserving it was unnecessary. Modern societies identify remains through DNA, return bones to families, maintain cemeteries, and travel great distances to stand above someone who cannot know they came. Why? Why does knowing where the dead are matter to the living? Why can an unidentified body feel like an unfinished sentence? And if consciousness truly ends when the brain irreversibly stops functioning, what exactly are we honoring when we honor the dead? Perhaps we began digging graves to place bodies inside them. Yet somewhere along the way, the grave became a container for something that cannot decompose nearly as quickly. Our inability to understand how someone can cease to exist while continuing to matter. Your body is performing an astonishing amount of work just to keep you from becoming what you will eventually become. Every second, cells regulate their chemistry. Membranes maintain gradients, blood distributes oxygen, organs correct imbalances, and damaged structures are repaired or replaced. We experience this enormous biological labor as something ordinary, being alive. Death ends the coordination. Once circulation permanently stops, oxygen delivery collapses. Cells can no longer produce energy normally. Their internal chemistry changes. Membranes lose integrity. Enzymes that once served living tissue begin participating in its breakdown through autolysis. Microorganisms, particularly those associated with a digestive tract, contribute to decomposition. Later, depending on the environment, insects and other organisms may become involved. The body does not disappear at death. It loses the ability to keep itself assembled as a living organism. That distinction is unsettling, because the body you call yours has never been a fixed possession. It is closer to an event continuously preventing its own conclusion. Life requires maintenance every moment. Death requires none. And decomposition is not nature committing violence against us. It is chemistry continuing after the person can no longer participate in it. Temperature, moisture, burial depth, oxygen, insects, clothing, soil conditions, and countless environmental variables affect what happens next. There is no universal timetable by which every corpse decays. Under different conditions, remains can decompose rapidly, persist for long periods, become naturally mummified, or undergo other forms of preservation and transformation. So perhaps burial began with practicality. A decomposing corpse attracts scavengers and insects, produces strong odors, and can sometimes present health risks depending on the cause of death and circumstances. Separating remains from everyday living spaces therefore has obvious practical advantages. Yet practicality leaves an uncomfortable remainder. Why bury carefully? Why position bodies deliberately? Why return to graves? Why place objects beside people who cannot use them? Why spend valuable energy handling someone whose biological usefulness has ended? A pit can dispose of matter. A grave implies that the matter belonged to someone, and here biology reaches a boundary it cannot cross for us. Decomposition explains what happens to flesh. It does not explain why watching flesh disappear can feel like witnessing an offense against a person who no longer exists to be offended. Perhaps that is the first great contradiction of death. The dead no longer need their bodies, while the living cannot immediately stop seeing those bodies as them. Long before anatomy could explain autolysis, humans encountered that contradiction with their own hands. And eventually, somewhere in our deep past, someone looked at a dead member of their group, looked at the ground beneath them, and decided that leaving the body where it fell was not enough. At some point in human prehistory, death stopped being only something that happened to a body. It became something the living answered. We do not know who dug the first deliberate grave. We may never know. Archaeology becomes especially fragile this far into the past. Bones found beneath sediment are not automatically evidence of burial. Water moves remains. Earth collapses. Animals disturb skeletons. Natural depressions resemble graves after thousands of years. To claim intention, archaeologists need evidence that the body was deliberately placed rather than accidentally covered. And yet some ancient burials survive that scrutiny. At Kafse Cave, in present-day Israel, early Homo sapiens were deliberately buried roughly 100,000 years ago. Among the discoveries was the burial of a young individual associated with deer antlers. At other prehistoric sites, including School, human remains have also been interpreted as intentional burials. Then the story becomes stranger. We were not the only humans doing it. Evidence indicates that Neanderthals deliberately buried at least some of their dead. La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France remains an important example. Shanidar Cave in Iraq has produced some of the most discussed Neanderthal remains, although famous claims about flowers being intentionally placed with one individual remain disputed. That uncertainty matters. We want the ancient dead to explain themselves. They cannot. A grave preserves an action far better than it preserves a motive. Was the body buried because people feared scavengers? Because decomposition was distressing? Because the dead person remained socially important? Was there grief? Ritual? Some conception of existence after death? The soil keeps the gesture and loses the explanation. Still, consider what deliberate burial required. Someone had to remain near death rather than simply move away from it. Earth had to be displaced. A body had to be handled. Time and physical effort had to be spent on an individual who would never hunt again, never protect the group, never return a favor. From the narrowest calculation of immediate usefulness, the corpse could contribute nothing. Yet someone gave it labor. That fact does not prove religion. It does not prove belief in a soul. It cannot tell us whether prehistoric humans mourned exactly as we do. It reveals something more defensible and perhaps more haunting. In at least some ancient communities, death did not immediately cancel the dead person's claim on the living. Think about how extraordinary that is. A heartbeat had ended. A relationship apparently had not. Perhaps this is where the grave becomes more than a hole in the earth. It records one of humanity's oldest surviving contradictions. Someone had become incapable of needing anything, and yet the living behaved as though something was still owed to them, which leaves a harder question buried beneath the first one. What could possibly remain of a person after the person is gone? Death creates a question that biology can describe around, yet cannot answer for us. Where did the person go? Consider what disappears. Memory can be traced to processes in the brain. Personality can change after brain injury. Anesthesia can abolish conscious experience temporarily. Neurodegenerative diseases can alter memory, judgment, recognition, and behavior. Everything we reliably observe tells us that human consciousness depends profoundly on a functioning brain. When brain function irreversibly ends, science has no established evidence that an individual consciousness continues somewhere outside it. And yet the question survives. Why? Perhaps because explaining the machinery of consciousness is different from explaining what it means to have been someone. A human being experiences reality from a position no other person can occupy. Your mother did not merely have a brain capable of remembering your childhood. There were mornings she remembered that you had forgotten, private fears you never discovered, thoughts interrupted halfway through, things she wanted to tell you and postponed until postponement became permanent. Death does not merely remove a participant from the world, it destroys a point of view. An entire first-person version of reality becomes inaccessible. Epicurus approached this problem from another direction. He argued that death should not terrify us as an experience. While we exist, death is absent. When death arrives, we are no longer there to experience it. Logically, the argument has extraordinary force. Emotionally, grief exposes its limit. The dead may never experience their absence. The living do. A father dies, and the next morning the world continues with almost insulting competence. Traffic moves, shops open, someone complains about coffee. A weather forecast discusses Thursday. How can reality lose an irreplaceable consciousness and remain so operational? This is where cultures began giving different names to what seemed missing. Soul, spirit, psyche, Atman, consciousness, self. These words are not interchangeable, and their traditions make profoundly different claims. Science has not demonstrated the existence of a separable soul. Conversely, empirical science alone cannot settle every metaphysical definition of personhood simply by measuring a corpse. So the dead leave us with an asymmetry almost impossible to digest. The universe contains everything required to prove that they existed, while containing no known procedure for returning their experience of existing. Perhaps that is why humans built afterlives. Egyptians imagined judgment beyond death. Greek traditions described Hades. Christianity and Islam developed doctrines of resurrection and judgment. Hindu traditions developed complex accounts involving karma and rebirth. Buddhist traditions confronted death through impermanence, rebirth, and differing accounts of what constitutes a self. Their answers disagree. Their existence reveals the same wound. A body can be buried in an afternoon. The question of where its person went can survive for thousands of years. Someone can die in a minute and remain expected for years. That is one of grief's cruelest contradictions. You can understand the death completely. You saw the body. You attended the funeral. You signed documents that would never exist if the person were coming back. Then something happens on an ordinary Tuesday, and your first thought is, I have to tell them. For a fraction of a second, death has not happened. Then you remember it again. How many times can a person die inside the same mind? Human relationships are built through repetition. A particular voice answers the phone. A particular chair belongs to someone. Certain news immediately creates the impulse to call them. Years of interaction teach the brain to expect a person as part of reality. Death can remove that person in an afternoon. Expectation is not always updated at the speed of a funeral. This is why grief is more complicated than letting go. Modern bereavement research has challenged the older assumption that healthy mourning necessarily requires severing psychological attachment to the dead. The concept of continuing bonds describes something many grieving people already know. Relationships can persist in altered forms through memory, habits, internal conversations, objects, values, and stories. You stop speaking with someone, yet you may spend the rest of your life speaking from what they left inside you. And this is where funerals become psychologically important. A funeral cannot manufacture acceptance. It cannot guarantee closure, and grief does not obey ceremonial schedules. What ritual can do is give social form to an irreversible fact. People gather. The death is named. The body is acknowledged. A life is spoken about in the past tense. Reality becomes communal before it becomes emotionally bearable. We understand the importance of that boundary most clearly when it is denied. Families of people missing in wars, disasters, disappearances, and political violence can endure a particularly difficult form of grief. Psychologist Pauline Boss used the term ambiguous loss for losses in which presence and absence cannot be cleanly resolved. Without certainty, hope can become painful. How do you mourn someone you are still permitted to imagine walking through the door? How do you bury a future when you cannot prove it has ended? This helps explain why identifying human remains can matter profoundly. A bone cannot restore a childhood. DNA cannot return a voice. Yet certainty can give grief an address. Perhaps this is what funerals have been doing, in different forms, across human societies. They draw a line that emotion may cross repeatedly, although reality cannot. Before it, there was a world in which you could still meet this person. After it, there is a world in which you can meet them only through what remains in you. And because absence has no body of its own, we do something extraordinary. We give it a place. One day, someone will think of you for the last time. They will probably not know it is the last time. Your name may cross their mind while they are driving, washing a glass, looking through an old photograph, or trying to remember the sound of your voice. Then life will continue. Years may pass. That person will die too, and something about you will disappear again. Perhaps this is the part of death we resist most fiercely. A body dies once. A person can disappear in stages, first from the room, then from routine, then from conversation, later from living memory. This is why graves carry names. A grave does not preserve consciousness. It does not preserve personality, laughter, fear, private thought, or the exact sensation of being alive inside a particular body. It preserves something far more fragile, a claim that someone existed here. This matters because history is full of attempts to destroy that claim. Wars, dictatorships, genocides, and political violence have produced anonymous graves, concealed remains, erased records, and families left without certainty. Modern forensic methods, including DNA analysis, have helped identify remains long after death in many such cases. Why does identification matter when the person cannot return? Because a number and a name do not perform the same human function. A number classifies remains. A name reconnects them to a life. This is why families sometimes wait decades for a body they already know cannot be alive. Bones cannot restore a conversation. A grave cannot reverse an execution. A forensic report cannot repair the years consumed by uncertainty. Yet identification can restore one thing. Violence often tries to steal: the right of the dead to remain specific. Not a victim, not a body. This person, this name, this life. And still, even graves are temporary. Stone erodes. Languages vanish. Cemeteries are abandoned. Civilizations collapse. There are ancient tombs today whose occupants are known only through fragments, and countless others belonging to people whose names are gone completely. So why build anything? Why carve a name into stone when time has already demonstrated what it does to stone? Perhaps because burial was never a serious attempt to defeat death. It is too modest for that. A grave does not say, "You will exist forever." It says, "You existed, and your disappearance deserves resistance." Not eternal resistance, human resistance. A few decades, a few generations, perhaps centuries if fortune allows. We cannot prevent the dead from becoming history. Eventually, we cannot even prevent history from losing them. Yet between death and oblivion, we place a marker, we write a name, we return to it. And there, the original question finally changes. Why do we bury the dead? Because the earth has to receive the body, but the grave serves another purpose entirely. It gives the living somewhere to place a love that no longer has a living destination. If this video gave you something worth carrying with you, consider becoming a channel member. There are already 100+ exclusive videos for members, and a 1-month free trial is available. You can also support the channel with super thanks. And sincerely, simply watching, sharing, and staying with these ideas already helps more than you might realize. Thank you for being part of this.